Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Ask Dave. A viewer, one of you people out there asks me, can you explain why Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique is such a difficult work to pull off? Why so many performances fail dismally? And I think I can. I'll give it a shot anyway. I've talked about it, of course, in my reviews of the work, of performances of the work, good and bad. I mean, if you watch those and you see, why some go well and some don't, then, you have a pretty good idea of what some of the answer is going to be. But I still think it's helpful to put it all in one place. Here is the bottom line. The worst thing you can do with the Symphonie Fantastique is be boring, because the piece is insane. Remember, it's a piece about a lover who is disappointed by his girlfriend, so he takes opium and hallucinates that he's to try to forget, but of course all he does is remember, and she's represented in a theme that's transformed at each movement. And in the second movement, the first movement is his situation, his frenetic and neurotic personality, and the introductions of the main themes. The second movement is a ball, a dance, where her theme sinuously weaves through the movement, where you can't really tell that she's there. He sees glimpses of her as the dancers whirl around, the music swirls by. It's marvelous. And at one point, she gets closer and he sees that she's really there, and he stops. The dance falters, and it all fades into the background as he sees nothing but her. Oh, it's just wonderful. Then we have the scene in the country. He runs away to try to get away from her. Well, it doesn't work. That's the bottom line. It pretends to be pastoral, but it still rises to a climax of tragic, neurotic tremors, ending with a beautifully poetic scene of distant thunder and shepherds' pipes and whatnot. The fourth and fifth movements, because there are five, is where things really heat up. In the fourth movement, he has murdered his beloved, his idée fixée, his idea that which he's fixated on. He's a stalker, and he's killed her. So he's being taken to the scaffold to be executed by guillotine. And it's a wonderful march, the march to the scaffold. It's spooky, it's creepy, it's heroic. It's all of those things simultaneously. And it's full of grotesque orchestration that needs to be emphasized. Low, flatulent trombones and screamy woodwinds going, and bassoons. And then finally, he has one last memory of his beloved before the guillotine comes down with a crash on the bass drum and cymbals, and the head falls into a bucket, bloom, bloom, with some pizzicatos and the strings. It's morbid, it's grotesque, it's fabulous. So that's that. And then finally, even though he's dead, he's dreaming still of a witch's Sabbath. And the head witch turns out to be his girlfriend. And she comes flying in on her broomstick, which is an E-flat clarinet, to a grotesque, ravishing and debaucherizing of the main theme. And then the witch's Sabbath is celebrated with the Dies Irae theme, which is made fun of, the Dies Irae, da, 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 da. That tune with funeral bells. And then there's a whole contrapuntal fantasy and spooky, ghosty things and skeletons clacking. And it all ends with an orgy of hellish laughter. Yeah. So if you can't do that and not be boring, then there's something terribly wrong with you. Artistically, there really is. And the problem is that Berlioz does not make the job easy. This symphony was written within a couple of years of the death of Beethoven, which is astonishing. It's an entirely different world, emotionally, orchestrally, aesthetically, all of that. But it also has strongly classical elements, classical forms such as sonata allegro, rondo, fugue. All these things are involved in this work. and they all have to be realized in the most colorful, urgent, exciting way. The first movement, it begins with a dreamy, dreamy introduction, and then the main theme comes in, and it's kind of a stop and start kind of a movement, because it's depicting the delirious distraction of the hero, the main protagonist. The main theme is his girlfriend. Do 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 do. Yeah da 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 da. And you hear immediately part of the difficulty of these pieces. Berlioz's melodies are not normal. They are long-limbed, kind of gangly, rhythmically tricky, full of emotional heat, and they're tricky. They're just tricky. All of his music is tricky. It's rhythmically tricky. It has a very high basic tessitura. He tends to pile up the harmony in the upper registers of the orchestra, with the basses and lower instruments sort of way down below. And that gives his music this open, spacious quality. But it has to still have a fullness. It can't just sound screechy. So it has tricky matters of balance. In the second movement, everyone does that well most of the time anyway, because you've got harps glittering along, and it's a waltz. And, if you can't play a waltz, there's something definitely wrong with you. The central movement, the scene of the country, is the killer. It is absolutely the killer, because it's about 15 minutes long, much longer. In some performances, it can go up to like 17, 18 minutes. It should never be more than about 15, 16 minutes. Like I said, the scoring is very wide, open air, high woodwinds. There's a dialogue between an oboe and an English horn at the very beginning. One of them's off stage. It has moments of silence and great stillness, and you got to keep it moving. It can be lethal if it isn't conducted with an underlying energy that only erupts at the big climax in the middle. Then you've got the March to the Scaffold. And as I said, first of all, it has a big repeat that you have to decide whether you're taking or not. I like the repeat because I just like the music. But historically, most conductors didn't take the repeat. Now they do. But if you're going to take the repeat, you have to play the music for all of the garishness, the vulgarity. The trumpets have to ring out. The bassoons have to burp. The woodwinds have to squeal. I mean, it's got to really sound demented. And the last two movements are far more popular than the first three, traditionally, because that's where all the fun happens. I mean, when Reference Recordings released the Symphonie Fantastique with the Utah Symphony, it came on 2 discs, and you got 2 copies of the last 2 movements, because they figured those were the ones for the audiophile sonics that you would be playing over and over again, and you'd wear out the grooves on one of them. You got like a bonus to the same movements twice. That's the difference. And then, of course, the Witches' Sabbath is just hellishly, hilariously fun. It's the only thing you can do with it is play it too slowly, because you've got this Gregorian chant thing, and then the orchestra mocks the Gregorian chant. It has to sound mocking. The church bells have to be dark and creepy. It can't just be your usual tubular chimes. It's like clank, clank, clank. No! You've got 2 tubas, farting along underneath everything. All of these colors and these crazy rhythms, they all have to be exaggerated. Really, they have to be exaggerated. Berlioz wants them to be. He wants them to be. And performances that don't do it screw up. The outstanding, sort of iconic version was by Charles Munch in the Boston Symphony, his second version from the early 1960s on RCA, where he just goes nuts on the piece. And there have been other wonderful performances. Leonard Bernstein got it several times. Riccardo Muti did a very, very fine version. There have been some very good modern ones by Michael Tilson Thomas and Marek Janowski, and Igor Markevich did a terrific one for DG with the La Moreau Orchestra, a real French orchestra. It can be done. It has been done. It really can be. But it offers so many opportunities and so many conductors, particularly the micromanagers, the overly controlled, the ones who don't know how to let go, the ones who don't encourage the orchestra to make an ugly sound when Berlioz wants them to. All of these pitfalls are very, very difficult to manage in concert. And it's long. It takes about an hour. So it's a tough, tough piece to do. And beyond the merely technical aspect of it, just realizing what's on the printed page in the most vivid and colorful possible way, there is the fact that the interpreter has to have some sort of identification with the composer, with his aesthetic, with his idiom, with his emotional intensity, with his emotional what's the word, the emotional quick changingness of the whole piece. It goes from happy to sad, from fast to slow, and it has to be knit together in a way that coheres. Colin Davis was an interesting example. Colin Davis spent his life devoted to Berlioz, and he was not the most unbuttoned of all the Berlioz conductors. He was no Charles Munch, for example, but he had the coherence. He managed to put the piece together very, very, very well. And so even if he didn't do the most exciting finale, he did one of the more cogent and listenable finales. And he had great orchestras. He had the Concertgebouw Orchestra for the Fantastique. For one of them, he recorded it like 4 times, 5 times, who knows. People who do Berlioz tend to make multiple recordings, which can be a problem because they compete with themselves and don't always do as well. But this, I think, I just wanted to throw this out there for you to pay attention to when you listen to the Symphonie Fantastique. The bottom line is if you find it dull, then something's terribly wrong. And it ought to build as it goes, even through that slow movement, which is a moment of repose. But there has to be tension. Always, always tension. So that I hope that answers your question. I mean, just sort of describes sort of what the piece is about and what it asks its interpreters to do. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.